So, full disclosure everyone, we had a little bit of an issue with our mics earlier, so we're going to be sharing mics today. Rimi, you and I are going to be sharing this one, so I won't throw it at you, I'll pass it nicely, and then you two are going to be sharing as well. Is that all going to be okay?
Perfect.
Cool, so if at any point it's not as seamless as it could be, just bear with us, we're trying our best. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to just dig in to all things in both of your worlds. So I don't know how they're going to stop us from talking really, because there's so much to cover. So I would love to start with the kind of origin story. I love to hear like how people came to their idea, or what was it that started to give you that inkling that you wanted to start something. So do you want to start really with LoveRaw?
Yeah, I can. Hi everybody. That'll help. Hi everyone. So I'm Rimi, co-founder of LoveRaw. So LoveRaw, we make indulgent plant-based chocolate, and we are making chocolate that is a force for good. So we're taking on we call it big choc, the likes of kind of Mondelez and Nestle. So we're fighting for their space and kind of, taking them on. So that's our kind of mission and our vision. So how did we start? It's a bit of a long story, but I will keep it brief. I did a talk yesterday and I was talking about it for 40 minutes, but I won't do that today. I always say that I was an accidental entrepreneur. It was a series of life events that led me to starting LoveRaw. I originally was in investment banking, and I had the opportunity to move to Spain with my husband, which we did. And around that time, unfortunately, my dad suffered from a brain hemorrhage, which really kind of made me evaluate kind of what I really wanted to do with my life. Like, am I really enjoying what I do? To be very frank, I didn't go through a great time either, so I was very upset, and I just moved to a new country where I was supposed to be loving life. I just got married and supposed to be learning the language, and I was 27. But instead, I'd lost my dad, I was grieving, and the only thing that kind of got me out of it was going to these farmers markets, and there was something really kind of special about it. There were like 3 generations, and just eating better and being a part of this community made me feel good, and that was it. It was kind of like a chain reaction. Once I started to eat better, I started to feel better, and then I thought, this is what I want to do, because when I used to look for products myself, there was a gap in the market. I thought, all these products, they say they're healthy, and that just really is an annoyance of mine, where just the packaging is misleading. It says healthy and it's not. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to do it. I'm going to make a product that tastes good and that's premium. I've never made a food product in my life. So I just thought, where we're going to start. Tried to set up the business in Spain, but it was where we were, it was very small and bureaucratic. So I just decided I'm going to move back to the UK and here to Manchester. And moved back in with I never lived with them anyway, my in-laws, without my husband. So they kindly allowed me to start the business from their house, which, initially I contacted a few factories and they were like, no, didn't take me seriously. They were like, our minimums are 20,000, you want to make, what, 200? And I was like, okay. So I was just determined to make it work. So I started making them at home, got certified by the Traffic Council, by the Soil Association, and then that's it. I took my samples to Whole Foods, that was my dream retailer, and the buyer was like, you know what, just send me your products. If any of you deal in food, you'll know what food buyers are like. They kind of just say, send me your product, and you just don't hear back from them. So I was like, you know what, I'm just going to go to London, I'm going to say I was in the area and drop some samples off. And that's what I did, and then I just did panic in the last minute, because I thought, I don't have a meeting and he's going to be really annoyed. So I just saw him and I just talked non-stop for a minute and just gave him the samples and say, just let me know what you think, and then just kind of scurried off. And then we got an order for 500, it said, and I thought, what, 500 bars? And he was like, no, 500 cases. And at this point hadn't even started to go into production. And I said yes, and he was like, can you give it in like 2 weeks? I was like, yes. and that's it. I was calling my husband, I was like, can you come back please? You know, and then my in-laws were helping me, I got my mum, so it was like a real family affair, and that's kind of where kind of the origin started of LoveRaw. There's much more to that, but I'll leave you with that for now.
Oh, I love that so much. Wow, there is so much to dig into there, and we're going to do that. But before we do, Andy, Ollie, tell us your origin story.
That was an incredible story. Funnily enough, ours also starts in Spain. So we actually met out in Ibiza when we were much younger people. We started out by putting on parties together out there. So we were nightclub promoters for about 5 years. And then Ollie was like, I went for 7 years, he went for 2, and he was like, you gotta come back to Manchester, get a real job, do a real thing. So I finally decided to come back and make my life in Manchester again, and Ollie had the great idea of black milk. The name actually comes from time in Ibiza where he was at a restaurant and he bought black squid in pasta. And like literally everyone was captivated by this unique sort of food, and that's something we've always strived to from day one to today. To create something unique, to create something engaging and exciting that really captures people's attention. Obviously the milk side of it, we do gelato, milkshakes, spreads that are cream based, and so that's been part of the story from day one. In 2015 we started our first cafe in Athlets. So if any of the locals know, Athlets is a perfect place to start a business for someone that we had no money, so they were really helpful. Bruntwood helped us sort of move in, get set up with next to nothing. And just through cash flow, we built the business on the back of just customers loving what we did, coming back day after day. In 2017, we got our Virgin Startup loan to open our first proper cafe down the street on Oldham Street. It's not too far from here. So with the help of Virgin and a few other people, we managed to open our first cafe that just has grown from that day to today. During COVID, we had a pretty crazy one where we had to go from the busiest cafe we wanted to closing those doors. And thankfully, we'd started our retail product in 2019, just before that hit. So we had our hazelnut cream. That's sort of our first product we launched with.
I love that you have it in your pocket.
You always carry one in your pocket.
More or less, yeah. I've got one hand for Mike, one hand for the product, and if you don't think
Sorry, just a
no.
baby.
Trumps there. So it's been a great story, and so we went into COVID and we really had to flip the business and pivot from what we were doing. We went from having a really successful hospitality place with multiple locations to be back down to one, but then online things just went crazy with this hazelnut cream. We went from 0 to 1,000 orders a month almost instantly, and just getting our head around that took a bit of time, and then we were fortunate we could grow our team quickly and just go from strength to strength as the world returned back to normal, which we're all super happy about. Online sort of died off, cafe went back to normal. We've really focused on retail since then. So I know we're going to go into the retails later on, but we've taken a journey. We've always had a vision to be a full service food and drink brand, and getting from A to B, C, D, wherever we're at now. It's been a long process. We've enjoyed every step of it. We've had help from banks along the way with Virgin. Other banks give us bounce back loans and stuff like that, but we've got there through hard work, determination, really great staff, and really great guests as well. So it's been really important to delight people from day one to today.
I love that so much. I love both of your journeys. I love that they're both starting in Spain as well. That wasn't planned. It's so cool.
Not far.
I'd love to talk a little bit about how you came to starting your first product, because I know you mentioned the pandemic, but when I was doing some of the back reading, I was reading about a story where like you had a customer who wanted like a tub of like the spread that you had in the cafe. It was like, can you just fill this up so I can take it home? And I might be paraphrasing this wrong, but that kind of led you to think, oh, people might buy this. Like, is that?
Yeah, so basically we've been developing sauces for many years in the cafe, like 5 years, if my memory suits me correct. And we always had the vision to turn it into a retail product. That was always the dream from day one, but we knew we didn't have the money in the kitty to promote a product just straight off the bat, like you said before, Mondelez, Cadbury's. like all the big brands, they've got a tight grip on that market, do you know what I mean? So we thought we'd go by a way of organic, like social media presence, growing it that way. Still to this day, you could count in two hands how much money we've actually spent on advertising. It's like diddly squat, do you know what I mean? So we went that way. We've toured Britain, we've worked with the brands like Fiorucci, Selfridges, and then we've just built that market share of the social media world to the, I mean, it's led full circle to Selfridges landed in the DMs and making an order while we were skiing down the slopes in Courchevel last week.
I love that. For you, Rimi, how did you kind of narrow in on what the first product would be?
I kept forgetting, sorry.
So that continuing on from kind of making the product, I had no idea how to make the product, or I guess how to get it to market, and I thought, okay, I got a domestic blender to start with, and then I was getting, you know, nuts and seeds from kind of, you know, the grocers, but then, you know, as we scaled, you know, got distributors, I was having like pallets of ingredients like coming down the drive, but it was like, if when you go down the factory route, you know, you go down machinery and it comes down, you know, it's all kind of machine based, but we just got molds, and it was just the simplest way to get it to market. I was like hand rolling them, and we were making like 700 a day, so we had blisters on our hands, and so it was just kind of a domestic blender, kind of molds, and I thought packaging, we don't have flow wrap. So I just got kind of brown paper bags from China, I had ordered them from Alibaba, and a hand sealer from Amazon, and that was it. It was very labour intensive, but I was determined to bring it to market. I mean, that was how we initially started. We have evolved since then. So I guess within about, and the product that we first launched was a fruit and nut product, kind of with superfoods and nuts and dry fruit. And within about 8 months, we were reaching those minimums the factories wanted. And then it was about finding a factory that shared the same integrity and kind of keeping, because when you do scale, sometimes you can lose, you know, the ethics of and the origins of when you first start. So it took us a while to find a partner, and then, you know, we were happy with the way they produced it. It was still kind of artisan looking, and thankfully they didn't have to kind of hand pack and hand seal. It was kind of flow wrapped. But then our products have evolved since we started. That was 10 years ago. And initially we started with that fruit nut bar, and then we went into small almond drinks, and we had superfood powders, and all of these categories, they were great. They were disruptive in their time, and we were ahead of our time, you could say, but they were quite niche. And once we launched, we had kind of, you know, that product life cycle where kind of we had an incline, and then it kind of just it just petered off, and we couldn't really do much to increase sales. And then once we entered the chocolate category about 4 years ago, we sold like 12,000 units in our first week, and it was just obvious to us that this is the category that we need to focus on. And within 6 months, 80% of our turnover was the chocolate. So then we had to make a decision, do we carry on with the other categories? And in a way, you know, it was quite special to me. It's what we started with, but I can't get too precious about kind of what we're offering. It has to also be about sales. So we discontinued the bars, the drinks, and the powders, which we learned a lot from, you know, with buyers and sales and launching the product and with the marketing. And we applied everything that we learned on those, because believe me, we made a lot of mistakes, and we applied it to the chocolate. And I think that's what led to the success of this category, because we just learned so much kind of, you know, in the 4 or 5 years kind of running up, and we had to pivot. I think as a business we had to survive, because had we been doing those categories now, I don't think we'd be here.
Yeah, that's so interesting, and I think that there's a really great learning here for anyone who is also running a product business or a B2C business, that you can have like a hunch and a passion and really be wedded to where you start, but you also need to listen to what the customers are telling you and kind of follow that market and that kind of drive as well.
Just to add.
Yeah, please.
Sorry. I guess initially, when we did launch the product, it was on intuition and having a look what was kind of a gap in the market, which I think if many of you are launching products or service, you're solving a problem. But now, I guess we always validate it with kind of data and see kind of what's kind of consumer-led, kind of what sells what's, for example, we do a plant-based version of a Kinder Bueno, and that's the #1 selling confectionery in the UK, whereas, when we started, it was just kind of, we just need to get an indulgent product out in the market, so it's quite handy to kind of, if you can get access to that type of data, to see kind of what sells.
Yeah, and I guess building on that, and I think this is a question for both of you as well, how, in those early stages, how do you start to get that customer feedback? I guess for yourselves, it's like people are coming in and...
We served tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people before we launched our first product. So our menu was, we had an idea and then it was built on specials. With special work to become part of the main menu, and things that weren't working got dropped off. So we had that evolution of our menu and our offering, and now we've got a really refined product in our cafe that's now lent itself to our retail products and food service products that we sell out. So it has been an evolution. You refine, you have the itinerations, and you get where you're going. It's taken years and years and years, but we've finally got to the point where we've got a bunch of products we're really proud of. We've got a menu, cafe and events, services and all these sort of things that are doing really well. So you just learn what works and what doesn't, you refine, you improve.
And do you find, you mentioned before about like that you haven't had to invest that much in like paid advertising and things like that, like you've kind of built a following online and in person as well. Like, have you found that kind of connection with customers kind of gives you that ongoing feedback that's really useful? Like people are bought in, so they're telling you like what's good, like what's not.
You see that wow face when you put like...
Yeah, I guess.
If you don't see that wow face, you've done something wrong, so you just see it around someone's table. And it's amazing, you see how happy they are, how excited, they'll share it with their friends, they'll talk about it, they'll take photos. And then that word of mouth has gone from word of mouth to digital, word of mouth from social media, and then press get involved, PR, you end up doing events like this, and it just sort of snowballs. But at the core of it is your product and your service and the experience. And if those three things aren't right, it doesn't matter, you can't polish a turd, it's got to be really good from the start.
Yeah, I hear you. And I guess, Rimi, for yourself, how have you kind of approached that connection with customers and using that for product innovation and differentiation?
I think being a challenger brand, we've focused a lot on social and on digital. So, we don't have kind of big marketing budgets to do kind of out-of-home campaigns and these kind of fancy focus groups where, we can, get people's opinions. So we've built a good kind of organic following over the last 10 years on socials, and we use that to our advantage. So we kind of just get our kind of loyal followers and kind of get them together. But then you don't want to be kind of skewed either, so we get kind of consumers that maybe don't follow us as well to get a kind of more real view of, what they think of, the product or where they want it to be seen or, how it tastes, and that's what's really helped us. And a little bit of kind of guerrilla, like we just don't go down kind of the normal route. So kind of, make kind of Facebook closed off kind of groups and kind of getting opinions that way. But there's a platform that's really been handy called LoveRaw, and they're US based, but they kind of collect kind of a platform of ambassadors. So we've got about 800, and they're just people that are passionate about the brand, and in a way people buy from people, and we don't pay too much to influencers. It's just what we can get from kind of the love of the product. So we do rely a lot on kind of the spread of the word of kind of our consumers, and kind of whatever feedback that we can get. So that's what's really been handy, and TikTok and things that can go viral, which is really helpful. Yeah.
And I really want to dig into brand with you all, because I think that you both have strong, unique brands. I think authenticity comes through very strongly, and that's, from an outsider's perspective, feels like something that's really important across both of your brands. I'd love to hear how you approached building the brand and getting it to be so unique and authentic. Do you want to start?
So, I mean, I like to start off with simplicity. We're all about joy, like spreading joy. Joie de vivre is one of our greatest sayings. And that's why I chose Love Heart. It's also the shape of the like that people click if they do like you on Instagram, something that we've had quite a few people do for ourselves. But yeah, it's all about simplicity for me, like bold typographic design, like very conscious, clear, like colours, like things that are impactful, things that linger in your mind, like colours that you don't necessarily associate with that type of food. Like I always go for alternate colours, like we use purple for pistachio and things like that.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Pistachios are actually purple in their infancy, and that's why I like to do that. But yeah, we always try to switch up. Sorry, I'm really ill.
That's right, you've got water.
I have.
Should we get you some
I've got
more?
a chest infection, so it's a bit.
I had it last week, so I'm not scared. It's my fault.
Maybe we should do you want to come closer to me, just in case? And Rimi, for you, when it came to building the brand behind, or at the front of LoveRaw, how did you approach that?
I guess our branding has gone through an evolution. Like, to be very frank, our branding was absolutely terrible when we first started. I say terrible, but it did quite well. I found like a freelance designer that, you know, just mocked up the packaging for 50 quid. And, you know, like I said, it was in brown paper bags, so it was a fruit and nut bar, so it looked quite rustic. Everything came together, and I think that's what contributed, to kind of the success of maybe that. And then after, you know, when we were evolved, we were like, okay, you know what, we need to change up the packaging when we went to flow wrap. And unfortunately, we had a dip in sales after that, because we did try and kind of change the look and be a little bit more less rustic and more kind of minimalist. But then I guess in the world of food, if you change one thing, people eat with their eyes, and people, I guess, if they see one thing, they just think it's a change of product and they get put off and they'll just kind of move on to something else. And then again, you know, we didn't really have the money to kind of redo our branding, but then we did in 2018, and that's when we could afford a creative agency, and they sat down with us and they kind of got down to kind of, you know, the ethos of who we are and, you know, our values, and we kind of toyed with putting ourselves on the packaging. And I really like that idea with what we're trying to achieve, you know, taking on corporates like Cadbury's and Nestle. They don't have any personality, and you know, we're a family-based business. I work with my husband. You know, when I started out, no children, and I've had 3 children along the way, pregnant with my 4th, and we really do like to kind of bring that into the brand, and you can kind of see that in our socials and our packaging, and that's what consumers love, the authenticity of it. So, and going back to kind of brand equity, our brand grew a lot over COVID. I mean, initially our sales kind of dropped off the edge of a cliff because nobody was going into store, and you know, whoever did go into kind of the supermarkets, they just wanted to do their grocery shopping, not impulse, which is what we are. But then we kind of changed things up, and we just got onto socials straight away, and everybody was on socials. So that was an opportunity for us to kind of just get samples out to all the consumers that we could, and launch new products. We were able to do that, thankfully, and that's how our kind of brand grew. I guess it was very opportunistically and very organic.
That's so interesting that like the first packaging, which you're like, yeah, it wasn't that great. People are like, we love it. Like that's what we bought into. I love that so much. Something else that I wanted to talk to you all about was a kind of inevitable or a big milestone for any food and beverage brand is, are we going to go down the retailer route? Are we going to get stocks on shelves? And you've both done that. So I'm sure that anyone else in here that is thinking of starting or has started a food and beverage brand would love to hear about that experience and how you approach that. You've mentioned your Whole Foods approach, which I absolutely love, but you've gone on to be stocked in even more. So can you tell us a little bit about what that journey's been like and how you've approached it, and any tips that you might give? I think that's a big one as well.
So I guess I briefly mentioned before about the 3 categories that were quite disruptive but niche, and that's where we found we were contacting supermarkets where we wanted to be, Sainsbury's, Tesco, Waitrose, but the buyers just didn't understand, I guess, the category, and to be honest, it was quite niche, so they want things that are, I guess Waitrose a little bit more specialist, but Tesco would never take on anything that niche. And I guess that's where we knew the limitation was, and then when we launched the chocolate, and then we sent this to the buyers, it was a different story. So it was, yes, you know what, we like the taste, there's nothing else like it on the market. And then we tweaked it even more because the chocolate was quite clean when we started. It was coconut sugar, it was, we used a certain type of cacao, it was a little bit dark. But then when we really delved into it, consumers just wanted vegan chocolate. They didn't care about the sugar, that as long as it tasted good, and with us, a force for good is really important, so we don't use palm oil, and that it was sustainable. Those are the 2 factors that were really important, and that's what really stood out for the grocers as well. So then it was a little bit more mainstream, and then with some grocers, like it took us 2 years to get into Desco. It was, these buyers rotate quite often, so it's just kind of starting a conversation and then networking with some buyers, and then they'll move on. But it's a process, nothing happens very quickly. But then it's also kind of a snowball. When one retailer has them, then the other grocer will take it on. Then you can prove a positive case study with sales with one. So you've got factual data that your product sells, and then you can go on to kind of others. So that's with kind of the grocers. And I guess that's kind of the baseline. That's where our rate of sale would be the highest. And then you've got your retailers where it's just to have good exposure, where people will just see you, and it's fantastic marketing. Like we've just launched recently with British Airways and actually Virgin Atlantic, and I keep getting friends that I've got on flights go, just see you on here, because they know like the slog that we've had for 10 years. So I'm really proud of that, and they're proud of that. And we've had investors contacting us as well from just seeing us on airlines. So it's kind of like you'll have your kind of baseline, your bread and butter where you do, but then it's like you'll want your retailers where you just get out to kind of more consumers and from kind of a marketing point of view.
And for yourselves,
yeah,
how's
so
that experience?
our story's a little bit, it's quite simple actually. I was on paternity leave and I spotted booths at a competition because, like you've touched upon, like we've got a background in retail. We didn't know who to speak to, where to go. So I spotted a competition, entered it, got to the final, and they chose someone who was more up north, closer to their office to nurture instead of us. But then they also said, do you want to come and pitch? So we pitched on a really dodgy internet line in Chester from Andy's mum's living room. And they loved it, and they said, you need to do a bit more to the jar. As you can see now, I've done an update on it, but it was just literally a big massive love heart before I did that. So that opened the door to booths, and then we saw another competition, entered that, and then we actually won that one. So it was 800 people applied, and then we got into the final 8 of Co-op Apiary Scheme. So that went really well. Then we have just had Selfridges come to us through social media. We've just had Waitrose knock our door as well to launch in October.
We didn't go knocking on the doors of kind of grocers straight away, and that's what worked for us. That's the type of product that we were. So we started off in the independents, kind of in the health stores, and it's only really recently where we've kind of gone into the grocers. So I guess that's a bit of advice, and don't feel like you have to go through it. And to be honest, you'll learn a lot from just being retailed with the independents and things that you can kind of take into the grocers, because if you have a listing with a grocer kind of initially, there will be things that go wrong, and you can learn things from kind of your previous smaller listings.
I would say we've had the same thing. Being wholesale to retail was probably step 5 for us. We had our cafe first of all, so things were refined there. And we were selling, so we had our cafe menu, and then we had products on the shelf. So that was step 2, where people would buy something in the cafe and then take a jar home with them to enjoy it at home. So so much dessert you can eat in one meal, so they'd enjoy it at home. And then people were then buying it off our website, which was sort of step 3. And then we approached some of the smaller shops around us, and anyone was like general store. They gave us our first opportunities. They're just a great independent store nearby. So we learned a lot from that. Like you said, there's so many iterations, so many tiny little mistakes. Even this job we're not delighted with. We need to keep on making changes. So you've got to make decisions if you print loads of stickers or labels and spend not too much money, like tiny batches and spend a fortune, but the knowledge that you'll keep on improving. So yeah, it's been a process. And then, like Ollie said, booze was first, and that was like step 5. So we kept on refining until we were ready. And we held off for about a year, because there's a big difference between D2C online and retail. On the website, you've got the product listing information, photos, everything you could possibly ever want to sell, whereas when you're on a shop shelf, you've got the front of the label, and that's it. People might pick it up after that, read the back, but it's such a difference.
Yeah, I think there's such a great learning there. I think sometimes there's like, as a founder, there's like a lot of comparison, and so you might see a brand that's like stocked in Tesco's now, or like you know, all of the other big ones, and you're like, oh, I need to get there, but you don't always see the steps that someone's gone through to get there. And I think that there is a real power in the like starting small and iterating and learning before, you know, what will be inevitably a difficult job to then get into those bigger markets as well.
So I previously had like a fashion brand as well before Black Milk, and I learned like a very hard lesson, because I got in bed with an American company that were just selling so much of my product, like we were doing 100 to 1,000 orders a week, and they went bust overnight, and I got left like absolutely just with no business overnight. So when we started again with Black Milk, like I was like, just definitely go for the organic growth and slowly cultivate it, like you mentioned, going in the smaller shops first and building it up. And that's why I went for competitions like Booths and the co-op things, because they nurture and help you and guide you on the way.
I love that so much, that kind of like iterative learning as you go approach. And that kind of leads me on to my next question, which was about the entrepreneurial journey. Alice shared with me a LinkedIn post from a founder of Alpaca Coffee, Victoria, that said running a startup was the best real-world MBA you could get. And then we were looking at like how much an MBA costs, and it's like hundreds of thousands of pounds, or it can be up to, but it doesn't replace like learning on the job how to like run a business. So I'd love to hear from you like what you would say about learning on the job as a founder in a new industry or a new field, and are there any tips that you would share in hindsight about becoming a founder and going on that journey?
Should I go first?
Yeah, I'm like,
Gosh, it's been quite a journey, but I would kind of describe it as, I think I saw a diagram like a few weeks ago, and it's like this scramble, and you know, and it really is like that. It's just highs and lows. But I think sometimes when you can get going, you kind of get the wins, and then you're like, okay, what's the next one? And then what's the next one after that? But I think what I've learned is just to kind of slow down and kind of celebrate the wins. And it is about kind of reaching a goal, and you know, when you get investors on board, it's about kind of meeting targets, but it's also about the journey and the colleagues and kind of the wider community and the relationships that you make. Because I don't have a social life outside of work, and you know, I do spend most of my week, you know, with my colleagues. So you know, it's about cultivating the relationships with them and the network, and I feel like that's what I've taken. It's definitely about kind of, it's definitely about kind of the journey for me, yeah.
What about yourself?
So I would say I've always made sure that I'm not the smartest person in the room. So always surround myself with people who are in the best of the best, like best graphic designers, best, like if it's like, yeah, it's just you surround yourself with people who are far better than yourself and you'll always win.
There's a really good book that talks about that idea. It's called Who Not How. I can't remember who read it, who wrote it rather, but it talks about how like you can't, as a founder, you can't know and be great at everything. Like yes, you can learn, but it's like what's the best use of your energy? Is it finding the right people and then you doing what you're really good at, or is it learning all of these things that you're not going to thrive in all of them? So I love that advice.
Yeah. I would say as an entrepreneur, maybe 30% of the time should be dedicated to learning or research, or a bit of both, where you're always continuously improving. As an entrepreneur, you should be pushing the envelope of whatever your business is and the sector it's in. So to be at the cutting edge, you should be researching things that are directly involved, and then things that are tangential to that and don't have that much involved. You've mentioned Oxford. I actually went on a business course there, so I do courses on and off every sort of 2 years or so. So I did economics at uni, but then I've gone back and done masters and business courses and stuff like that. So it's great to have a theoretical framework, but then the reality is often quite different. So it's bridging that gap, and honestly, YouTube these days, I learn so much off YouTube. I'm a visual learner, so I just watch a video and pick up most of it, then I apply it, and then by doing stuff you learn so quickly. And like Ollie says, have people around you can learn from. We learn from our team all the time, so we're not the best in the room at whatever task it is, we try and hire to somebody better.
Is there anything you're learning at the moment?
We're learning a lot from Mullen.
Shout out to Mullen. He joined the team 2 or 3 weeks ago, and he's an Amazon Pro, so he's made one Amazon one. So we did a talk like this at Manchester Met, where we both went about 2 or 3 weeks ago. Met him and his friend, and we basically joined the team straight away.
We're definitely not the smartest in the room when we have Mullen.
I love that. I love the power of events to like bring people together. I hope that you make connections like that tonight and someone else gets a job out of it.
Sorry,
go ahead.
Because I think similar to yourself, kind of not the smartest person in the room, is just kind of remove any ego.
Yeah.
So I just think, you know what, I've got kind of a growth mindset, which is, I guess quite a lot of entrepreneurs have. So it's just trying to kind of just learn kind of from everyone else. And also one thing that I have learned, you know, with the entrepreneur, like you're pumped and it's the hustle and, you know, persistence, but sometimes you're going to have days where you feel crap. And you know what, you're just like, oh, you know what, I'm sick of this. Got a 10th email where it's like they've said no, and it's okay to feel low as well. You don't try and mask that feeling, just feel it and get through it, and then just pick yourself back up again.
I think that's where your support network comes in, like being open about that and being like, actually today's a bit shit, and I need to talk about that. It doesn't mean that you hate your business, it's just, it's really hard a lot of the time.
Just be transparent.
Exactly. So we are going to open up to Q&As in a moment, so this is your warning to think about your questions. But before we do that, I have one last question. Well, I actually have loads of questions, but you know, time is up. So my last question is, what are your favourite things about running a business in Manchester?
I've said it already, it's just having a cafe and see people go, wow, that's just the most special bit. Online or retail, you don't really see that as much, you see photos maybe, but somebody sitting down at the cafe with their friends, excited, going through the menu and then seeing the plate come out. It's that wow moment, so it's unique. I've seen that for 9 years now, it's still not got old.
Do people say wow more in Manchester than London?
Is it ooh a bit?
Oh, I love that.
Ooh, wow, and I feel
So I'd say that it's the creative community that we have within Manchester. I'm from South Manchester, Chorlton. It's known as it's like the Hacienda graveyard, some people call it. Like we won't go into that. So basically, yeah, it's bouncing off people who are in community and meeting people like we mentioned, Mullen. And like literally everyone we work with, I literally met them from being in Manchester, like just nightlife and all those different things, but we definitely have like a different energy here, and we have a very forward-thinking energy, and I mean, just in the first week of launching Black Milk, one of our friends, she was over in London, she works for Harrods, she got us on the social media within the first week of launch, and it's just little things like that, someone who you met as a childhood friend coming in, just doing things like that. I just think Manchester has a magic that other places don't, and there's a love here.
So, what about you, Rimi?
I guess for us, we did have a choice when I was saying that we moved to Spain, and I did move back, and then we moved back to the UK, and we had to choose, like, do we move to London where a majority of food businesses are, or shall we move to Manchester? And we chose Manchester, I guess, for those reasons of kind of it's diverse, it's the creative kind of community, and not saying that there's north and south divide, but we are kind of a friendlier culture kind of up here, and it's nice, it's kind of community led, it just feels a lot more kind of personal, where kind of down south is a lot more kind of fast paced, but we're kind of glad we made that decision. Like, we're based in South Manchester, where it's even a little bit smaller, but we do a lot within kind of the city centre as well, within kind of the northwest kind of community of influencers, and just kind of panels and talks, just like today, to help people like yourselves.
I think it's more affordable as well, like rent's lower, wages are lower. Well, there used to be. Now everyone from London's moved up north, but yeah, when we started, we found it a lot easier to be here than say London. But I think it's a great city.
Awesome. Thank you both. Thank you all, rather.